The lands between. A place where ambition is only matched by the sheer scale of its dysfunction. Demigod clash, betray their kin, and make decisions that would put the most scandalous of soap operas to shame. Hello fellow Tarnished, today we're gonna try to answer a very simple question that has been bothering me for a little while. Why Radahn? In order to do that, we need to untangle the tales of the twin prodigies and the Carian trio, exploring how their fates are linked and how they led to the catastrophic events known as the shattering, and everything that came afterwards. Specifically, we're going to dig up how Miquella ended up with Radahn and how the schemes of Ranni and Miquella interfered with each other with catastrophic results. Oh, and by the way, we're diving deep into spoilers here for both Elden Ring and the DLC, so if you're not ready for that, this is your cue to leave. For the rest of you, let's get started. Our story begins with Radagon, the red-haired champion of the Golden Order. One day, our hero decides to mix things up with the excuse to bring peace, and so he marries Rennala, the powerful Carian queen. Together, they bring 3 children to the world: Ranni, Rykard, and Radahn. Each of their children inherited something unique: Ranni with her affinity to the occult, Rykard with his fiery ambition, and Radahn, who took his father's love for battle and his mother's mystical connection to the stars. But just when you think this family might make it, Radagon pulls a classic move. He ditches Rennala for another woman. It goes off with Marika, the god, marries her and leaves behind a broken home and 3 kids who, let's face it, are bound to grow up with some serious issues. But luckily for us, this is where things start to get interesting. Out of his first 3 children, provided they are the first, but let's not get into that now, for whatever reason, Ranni was handed a fate of her own and was designated to become an Empyrean. So she gets handed her own very 2 fingers, a shadow wolf named Blithe, and a lifetime supply of questionable decisions. Armed with her new crew, she was officially on the express lane to godhood. No returns, no refunds. But after seeing her father Radagon leave and realizing the Golden Order's true nature, Ranni began to plot her own path, a path that involved becoming a god, but with 0 strings attached, because honestly, who wants that? No, I mean, seriously, who would want that? Didn't the Greater Will realize that the new generation would need better incentives other than you get to be a god, but we control your every move? Come on now. Anyway, moving on. In the meantime, we have Radagon settled down in his new home, and being the ambitious creature that he is, he wasn't content with just one family. Oh no, he happily settled down with Marika now, and so he got himself a new set of twins, Miquella and Malenia, known as the twin prodigies. A clear upgrade from the current trio. Anyway, these 2 were something else. Miquella, eternally youthful and wise beyond his years, and Malenia, a warrior, unmatched. Together, they became the Golden Order's shining stars. Anyway, like all stars, there's always a dark side. Miquella, despite being eternally youthful, was basically useless in the real world. I mean, sure, looking young forever sounds cool, but let's be real, have you ever been mistaken for being younger than you are? It's not that great. Sure, you might look great and it makes you feel good for a little while, but no one takes you seriously. So yeah, Miquella's stuck looking like a kid, and then there's poor Malenia. She had it even worse. The poor girl was cursed with scarlet rot, and if that wasn't bad enough, she started losing limbs here and there. So anyway, back to Miquella. Let's be honest, Miquella wasn't the kind of guy to just sit back and accept his fate. Cursed with eternal youth, he wasn't content to just be the Golden Order golden child. No, he had bigger plans. Plans that involved breaking free from the very curse that defined him and then, raised to godhood. But here's the thing. Both Miquella and Malenia are Empyreans, just like Ranni. And in the world of the lands between, there can only be one god. So what to do? Well, easy. Miquella has to get his sister out of the way. But let's be serious for a moment. Why waste such a powerful potential? The poor thing's already half cursed with scarlet rot, but she is also a force to be reckoned with. So instead of discarding her, Miquella might have thought, why not use her? Especially when you have the power to bend wills to your liking. And so Malenia, who could have been a candidate for godhood herself, ends up as another tool, maybe the first tool in Miquella's grand design. Perhaps her undying loyalty wasn't bound out of love or devotion, but out of Miquella's subtle manipulation, his first little experiment. A tragic twist, I know, but hey, it's all in the family, right? And now that Miquella has Malenia, whose blade firmly under his control, he could focus on the next step of his master plan, securing a lord. And really, there was no better candidate than Godwyn. I mean, come on, he's the perfect package. Heroic, kind, friends with dragons. What more could an Imperium want? So, that's it. Miquella sets his sight on Godwyn as his consort, binding him to a miserable fate. The stage is set, the pieces are moving, and Miquella is one step closer to becoming the god of the lands between. The perfect couple, perfect Godwyn and perfect Miquella, or almost perfect as soon as he figures out how to fix the age thing. But yeah, both so devoted to the Golden Order, both destined to rule, just the perfect plan. Or so it seemed. Remember Ranni, the other Empyrean, the one left behind on the other side of their father's family? Yeah, let's not forget about Ranni, the Ranni who was quietly plotting her own rebellion. As Miquella was playing the hero, the god, and the architect, Ranni had her eyes set on her own life plan. She knew that as long as the Greater Will controlled their fate, she would never be free, so she knew that with Miquella as the rival Empyrean, her path to godhood was in jeopardy. So she devised a little neat plan of her own, one that would shock the lands between to its core. And yeah, we now need to talk about the infamous Night of the Black Knives. Ranni, waiting patiently in the background and building very targeted alliances, came up with an ingenious plan to sort things out her own way. Basically, long story short, on the Night of the Black Knives, our lunar princess Ranni orchestrated the assassination of her half-brother Godwyn. Why Godwyn? Well, yeah, why Godwyn? It gets a bit tangled here, but first of all, Miquella needed a lord consort to carry on with his godhood plan, right? So if Ranni eliminates him, she is able to put a stop to Miquella's plan. And in the meantime, she also really pisses off the Greater Will. Badly. And on top of that, you remember Marika, the one that stole her dad? Well, she completely loses it. So, yeah, win, win, win. But this wasn't only a petty family quarrel or a race to become the most popular girl. No, this is way more complex than that. It was a calculated move to break free from the Greater Will's influence. And here how it works. You see, to pull off her plan, Ranni needed to get rid of her physical body. Now, whether this was to prevent the Greater Will from using her, or because all aspiring gods seem to have to shed their physical form, like we find out in the case for Miquella in the DLC, it's hard to say. But anyway, the point is, Ranni needed to die in body while keeping her spirit intact. And for that, she needed someone else to die in spirit but stay alive in body. Enter poor Godwyn, caught in the crossfire of his little half-sibling's power struggle, who ended up as the very convenient, unfortunate sacrifice. So Ranni ended up using the stolen rune of death to kill Godwyn's soul in her place, leaving his body around to rot and causing all the other mess we're very familiar with. So good luck to Miquella now trying to sort something out with his half-available consort. This act of rebellion set off a chain reaction that eventually led to the shattering, the event that apparently tore the lands between apart. So, yeah, then came the shattering, the event that would plunge the lands between into chaos. This wasn't just a random cataclysm. This was Marika's heartbroken response to the death of her fave, Godwyn, and the mess her other children had made of the world. I'm sure every mother feels like shattering an Elden Ring every now and then, but this had heavy consequences for Marika, which ended up, well, in prison, or the equivalent in a fantasy video game. But yeah, basically she was gone, leaving the demigods to fight over the Elden Ring fragments like a pack of wolves. All of them joined in, even little Miquella apparently, who managed to get his hands on a great rune somehow, maybe through Malenia or Radahn, but who knows, and it doesn't really matter to our story at this point. So okay, let's stop for a second and get back to the rest of the family for a moment. To recap, we have Miquella, Lordless, Godwyn, kind of that, but definitely out of the game, Ranni's body rotting somewhere in the lands between, and her spirit lost, Malenia, still ever loyal to Miquella for whatever reason. And so what about the other two half-siblings, Rykard and Radahn? Let's start with Rykard. Rykard, assumingly the older of the litter, was busy nurturing his own brand of discontent. Unlike his siblings, who either aligned themselves with the Golden Order or plotted against it, Rykard saw the whole system as fundamentally rotten. He couldn't stand the hypocrisy, the corruption, or the fact that everyone seemed so eager to bow to some divine order. So anyway, what does he do? He naturally sides with Ranni, and I don't really need to explain this, sharing her disdain for the gods, and together they plot their rebellion, but Rykard takes things a step further. Instead of just saying no to the gods, he decides to embrace blasphemy in its purest form. By merging with the god-devouring serpent, Rykard transforms into a monstrous being, rejecting the greater will entirely and committing himself to a path that leads him far from redemption. And while Rykard's story could be its own twisted saga, for now let's just say that he and Ranni had a deal. She would provide him with the blasphemous claw, a tool that could challenge even Malekith, the one from who she stole the Rune of Death, or at least a fragment of it, and should he ever came after them. But more on Rykard's snake charmer days in another story. So while Rykard was busy with his heretical hobbies and Ranni was plotting her own cosmic rebellion, Miquella wasn't just gonna sit still. He had his own game to play. You see, with Godwyn out of the picture, Miquella needed a new consort to ascend to godhood. We know that Miquella is a pretty clever kid, and I'm also pretty sure he would have been able to at least sense who was behind the Knight of the Black Knives. Anyway, Miquella really needs to pull together his plan B and stop Ranni's plans in their tracks. Because here's the plot twist. Ranni's fate was tied to the stars, and Miquella wasn't about to let her ascend before he did. Enter Radahn, the mighty general who could literally move the stars. Miquella knew that Radahn was the perfect candidate after Godwyn, not just as a consort. Miquella goes to Radahn and makes a pact with him for him to become his lord consort, basically Godwyn's replacement. Radahn likely agreed to be Miquella consort, seeing it as an honor to serve the Golden Order he so much loved. Little did he know that being a consort meant certain death, probably an eventuality that Miquella didn't share with him at the time. So, with or without a bit of manipulation, and by manipulation I mean using his ability to charm and compel others, Miquella convinced Radahn to be his consort and also convinced him to hold the stars. Here's how it went in my opinion. We are all more or less familiar with Radahn's obsession with Sellia. We know he deeply cares about that town for whatever reason we're not going to discuss here, and that he would do anything to protect it from disaster. And we do also know for a fact that this is the reason why he halted the stars. So Miquella probably told Radahn that his beloved Sellia was a risk, that a meteorite was about to hit the town and wipe it out from the face of the world. And because a meteorite was probably indeed coming from maybe Ranni, as she needed to open her path to the Eternal Cities, Radahn panics. He doesn't stop to think, but instead he trusts his new true love blindly, because why would he deceive him on their honeymoon, right? And also he probably had no other choice, and he holds the stars. What Radahn didn't realize was that Miquella's true goal was to delay Ranni's fate and keep her from reaching her full potential as a rival god. Radahn, ever the loyal soldier, thought he was protecting Sellia and maintaining order in the heavens, but in reality he was just another pawn in Miquella's game. In fact, when we kill Radahn later on and a meteorite does strike the lands between, it doesn't fall anywhere near Sellia, proving that Radahn efforts were, in a way, pointless. Anyway, back to the rest of the story. We are now in the full swing of the Shattering War. All the demigods, the other siblings, the children of Queen Marika are fighting for power, and as the war raged on, with Ranni out of the picture, remember, she's gone, her body slain and her soul AFK, on top of that her plans shattered, Miquella prepares to enact his little plan this time. Miquella's ambitious plot to ascend to godhood was centered around his beloved creation, the Haligtree. Ah, the Haligtree, an alleged sanctuary for the neglected and the shunned. But let's be real, whether his intentions were pure or this was just another money laundry charity front, who can say for sure? I mean, opening up a charity Haligtree while running some shady business behind the scenes, that's hardly a new trick. And judging by how this guy operates, it's safe to assume that shady practices were just another day in the office in the lands between. But either way, Miquella's grand plan with his Haligtree was nothing short of ambitious. As part of his preparation for godhood, he entered a cocoon within the Haligtree, intending to ascend to a higher state, grow up basically, and reach the land of shadow. To do this, he had to abandon his flesh and Imperial lineage behind. Yep, no more human bits, just pure unfiltered god material. So, just as the Haligtree was starting to get its stuff together for Miquella to work, along comes Mohg, Miquella's half-brother. Yes, another half-brother. This one's from the other side of the family, from Mom Marika and her other consort. I know, I'm struggling to keep track myself. It's like try to follow soap opera with a very confusing family tree, but bear with me. Mohg, ever the opportunist, sees Miquella in his cozy cocoon and decides to snag him, taking him to Mohgwyn Palace. And what's Mohg's grand plan? To elevate Miquella to godhood with himself as Miquella's consort. Ambition definitely doesn't lack in this family. So Miquella just vanishes. He's gone. Nobody in the lands between knows where he is. Even his sister Malenia seems to have lost track of him, though maybe she had an idea at the time, who can tell. But despite Mohg's best effort, Miquella remains unresponsive. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Some say Miquella planned this all along, using Mohg as a mean to gain entry to the Land of Shadow. Was it all architected from the beginning? Maybe. Does it matter? Not really. What we need to know is that Miquella is now in the Land of Shadow, abandoning bits of himself here and there as he goes. And one of those bits is Saint Trina, his other half. Now here's a plot twist. Saint Trina, it turns out, isn't too thrilled with Miquella's godhood ambition. She believes it will be his downfall, and let's be real, she's probably right. But Miquella, ever the focused one, discards Saint Trina like an old toy, fully rejecting his human connection and former self as he prepares for his ascension. So now, with the Shattering War carrying on outside, Miquella is in the Land of Shadow, plotting away, ready for Radahn to join him. Meanwhile, Radahn is in the lands between, holding back the stars, thinking he's protecting Sellia. And Ranni's kind of screwed at this point. But there's a saying, never leave loose ends behind. And that's where Miquella messed up. By not killing Saint Trina, he left a very loose end. My guess, Saint Trina managed to reach out to Radahn, revealing Miquella's true intentions, and maybe even Ranni's plan to destroy the Golden Order. So Saint Trina probably broke the spell Miquella had on Radahn, the one where he has to die in order to fulfill his purpose and follow everything he says, much like when we break the same spell in the Lands of Shadow and everyone gets back their brains, basically. With his free will back, Radahn now isn't too thrilled about dying for Miquella. Who could blame him? After all, the idea of sacrificing yourself to help someone else ascend to godhood isn't exactly appealing, especially when you didn't sign up for it. And this is when things get messy. Malenia, the blade of Miquella, finally steps into the picture. Her job? Make sure Radahn keeps his side of the pact and dies to join Miquella as his consort. But when she reaches Caelid, she finds Radahn not so keen on the whole dying for Miquella thing. The two face off in a legendary battle, with Radahn holding out as long as he can. In the end, Malenia fails. She can't defeat him, and they reach a stalemate, ending the shattering war without a winner. Believe it or not, they were the only two left to keep going. So Malenia, who had one job, fails spectacularly. She is dragged back to the Haligtree and left to wait for Miquella to return as a god. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. Meanwhile, Radahn, now affected by the scarlet rot, goes insane to her eyes and everyone else's, but he still holds on somehow. He's humiliated, but he's still standing, fighting against death to prevent Miquella from becoming the evil god he was destined to be. He's also still holding the stars back, preserving the Golden Order and stopping Ranni's plot. Radahn knew it all from the start. He held the stars in place, resisted Miquella's charm, and stood as the last bastion against the chaos that was about to swallow the lands between. He endured the scarlet rot, madness, and the loneliness of a hero with no more battles to win, just a grim, thankless duty to hold the line against the darkness. But then we show up. In our quest to power, glory, and maybe just because we really don't have anything better to do with our time, we kill him. Spectacularly, sure. During a festival in his name, sure. But in the end, we kill him. The only one out of everyone else we faced that was probably doing the right thing, the one true hero. With Radahn's death, the stars held back for so long burst free. Ranni's fate is set back in motion, and Miquella's twisted plan is given the green light. I honestly feel so sorry for Radahn. Thousands of years of suffering, 5,000 years, someone says, fighting and holding the world together with sheer force of will, all undone in a heartbeat by our intervention. All his efforts for nothing. And what do we do next? We stumble into the lands of shadow, clueless, trying to make sense of the mess we've just created. Why did we just kill Radahn? Why is there a cocoon in Mohg Palace? By the time we piece it together, the damage is done. Miquella, the mastermind we didn't see coming, is on the cusp of achieving godhood. So, what's our solution? We kill Radahn. Again. Because, it needs to be done. Again. Maybe we'll get it right this time, or maybe we're just the ultimate agent of chaos, destined to tear apart whatever remains of order in this world. In the end, we're not heroes. We're just cleaners, sweeping up the ruins of the very mess we created. Marika was probably wrong to call for our help, or maybe that's just how desperate she had become. With no one else left to pick up the shattered pieces of the world she once ruled, we weren't her champions. Maybe she didn't even have hope anymore, just a last resort. After all, she'd banished us once before, casting us out like the remnants of a failed experiment, and yet here we are, summoned back, not because we were the best, but because we were the only ones left. So here we are, standing in the wreckage, looking back at the chaos we've unleashed and thinking, whoops. And now it's up to us, to you. Help Ranni with A Rage of the Stars, or, well, don't. Just remember, Ranni isn't exactly the girl next door either. Whatever you choose, just know you're signing up for a whole new level of chaos in the lands between, no matter what. Thanks for watching.